Chapter 1. The Night Call. The rain fell incessantly, a carpet of dancing droplets that persistently battered the windows of Roman Hart's small office. The air inside was dense with cigar smoke, a habit he had developed over the years to calm his nerves. However, that night promised to be different. Something in the air seemed laden with omens. Roman, a middle-aged man with a face marked by time and struggles, was engrossed in his thoughts, examining old photos of closed cases. The phone on his desk rang, a sharp and unexpected sound that brought him back to reality. He answered immediately, his voice deep and hoarse from constant tobacco use. "Hart Investigations," he said, expecting another routine client. "Detective Hart." The female voice on the other end was trembling and urgent. "It's an emergency. Isabella Sinclair has been kidnapped. We need your help immediately." Roman felt a chill run down his spine. Isabella Sinclair was not just any young woman. She was the heiress to the vast Sinclair fortune, a family with deep roots in the city. "I'm on my way," he replied, with a determination he hadn't felt in a long time. The Sinclair mansion was a monolith of stone and glass, imposing and intimidating, especially under the torrential rain. Roman parked his car and ran to the entrance, where Thomas, the butler, awaited him with a grave expression. Thomas was an elderly man, always impeccably dressed, with a demeanor that denoted years of loyal service. "Mr. Hart, thank you for coming so quickly." Miss Sinclair was taken from her room. "Mr. Sinclair is devastated," said Thomas, guiding Roman through the grand corridors of the mansion. In Isabella's room, chaos reigned. The silk curtains were torn, the bed unmade, and furniture overturned. Roman began to scour the place with keen eyes, searching for any clue that could lead to the young woman's whereabouts. On the floor, a ransom note was partially hidden under a pillow. He picked it up and read aloud. "The truth will be revealed at 11:45. Prepare the ransom or you will never see her again." Roman frowned, intrigued by the precision of the mentioned time. He tucked the note into the inner pocket of his coat as he turned to face the room's occupants. Victor Hargrove, Isabella's fiancé, stood near the window, his face a mask of frustration and restrained anger. Victor was a tall man, with perfectly groomed blonde hair and icy blue eyes. "Who did this, Hart? Who took my Isabella?" His voice was filled with barely disguised desperation. "That's what I intend to find out, Mr. Hargrove," Roman replied, observing the man carefully. "Did you notice anything unusual in the past few days? Anything that might give us a clue?" "She was investigating something about her father," Victor admitted reluctantly. "Shady business deals. But I don't know the details." Evelyn Sinclair, Isabella's stepmother, entered the room with light steps, but her presence was imposing. She was an elegant woman, always impeccably dressed, but that night, her eyes were red from crying and worry. "Victor, let the detective work. We are all desperate, but he needs space to do his job," said Evelyn, trying to maintain calm. Roman looked at Evelyn, perceiving the tension in her behavior. "I'll need to speak with everyone who was in the house last night," he said, directing his gaze to Thomas. Thomas, always the pillar of stability, responded promptly. "I was here all night, Mr. Hart. I didn't see anything unusual until I heard the screams." Roman knew this night would be long and full of unanswered questions. He had 3 people, each with their own suspicions and secrets. The rain outside continued to fall, each drop a reminder of the passing time, each second too precious to waste. Roman lit a cigar, his eyes fixed on the ransom note. He knew he was only at the beginning of a journey that would take him down dark and dangerous paths. But he was ready. After all, rainy nights never brought just water. They brought secrets waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 2. The Crime Scene. The Sinclair Mansion, a monument to luxury and opulence, seemed darker than ever under the constant veil of rain. The lights glowed dimly through the tall windows, casting unsettling shadows in the elegant corridors. Roman Hart was at the epicenter of a sinister puzzle, and the first piece to be examined was Isabella's room. Roman entered the ravaged room with professional caution. Every detail could be a clue, every misplaced object an indication. He began to meticulously inspect the environment. The silk curtains were torn, the bed a chaos of crumpled sheets, and the furniture looked as if it had been toppled in a desperate struggle. Yet, something seemed too deliberate, as if part of the scene had been staged. He knelt near the bed and noticed a mark on the carpet suggesting something heavy had been dragged recently. Pulling the fabric slightly, he found a loose wire, cleanly cut, indicating someone had ensured there would be no alarms. As he analyzed the room, Victor Hargrove continued to pace back and forth, the tension evident in every movement. "Hart, there has to be something here that we're missing," Victor insisted, frustration clear in his voice. "And there is," Roman replied, rising slowly. "The question is, why was Isabella investigating her own father? And why now?" "She thought he was hiding something," said Victor, his expression desperate. "Shady business deals, maybe. But she never told me exactly what." Roman glanced at Evelyn Sinclair, who stood at the room's entrance, watching with eyes red from worry. "Mrs. Sinclair, did you know Isabella was investigating something about her father?" Evelyn hesitated, her trembling fingers playing with a silk handkerchief. "I knew she was worried, but I didn't know the details. Isabella was very private, especially about family matters." Thomas, the butler, cleared his throat discreetly, drawing Roman's attention. "If I may, detective, there is a safe in Mr. Sinclair's office that might contain some answers." Roman nodded, following the butler through the grand corridors to the luxurious office. The room was decorated with mahogany furniture, shelves filled with leather-bound books, and an imposing fireplace that night, was unlit. Behind a family portrait, the safe stood slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. Roman pulled open the steel door and examined the contents. There was a collection of documents and neatly organized folders, each marked with meticulous labels. He picked up a folder marked Confidential and began to flip through the papers. Bank transactions, meeting records, and a list of names appeared before his eyes. One name in particular stood out: Victor Hargrove. "Interesting," Roman murmured, putting the folder aside for more detailed analysis later. Upon returning to the room, he found Victor arguing heatedly with Evelyn. "This can't be a coincidence," exclaimed Victor. "The kidnapping, Isabella's investigations. Everything is connected. We need calm," Roman intervened, his firm voice cutting through the tension in the air. "This case has more layers than it seems. I will need access to all documents and Isabella's communication history." Evelyn nodded, albeit reluctantly. "We will do whatever is necessary, detective." Roman knew that every second counted. He needed to follow every lead, no matter how small, to uncover the mystery of Isabella's disappearance. The rain continued to beat against the windows, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time. He felt the truth was close, but still shrouded in deep shadows. Roman lit another cigar, his eyes fixed on the now-closed safe. He knew he was just beginning to unravel the web of secrets surrounding the Sinclair family. And with each new step, the path ahead became increasingly obscure and dangerous. Chapter 3: Suspects in Sight. The rain continued to pour outside, a constant hammer against the tall windows of the Sinclair mansion. Roman Hart, now with a stack of documents from the safe, felt the weight of revelations that could change the course of the investigation. He knew that to move forward, he needed to interrogate the suspects. Each had their own story, their own secrets, and Roman was determined to uncover them all. First, he called Victor Hargrove for a more detailed conversation in the office. Victor entered, his face still marked by anger and frustration. He settled into a leather armchair, crossing his legs almost casually, but his eyes betrayed a latent nervousness. "Victor, I need you to tell me everything you know about Isabella's investigations," Roman began, opening one of the folders marked with Isabella's fiancé's name. Victor sighed deeply before responding. "Isabella started investigating her father about 6 months ago. She believed he was involved in illegal activities, money laundering, something like that. I tried to convince her to leave it to the professionals, but she was stubborn. always wanted to do things her way. Roman observed every nuance in Victor's expression. And you think these investigations led to her kidnapping? Without a doubt, Victor replied, tapping his foot on the floor. She was getting too close to the truth. Someone wanted to silence her. Someone like you? Roman's question was direct, causing a moment of tension in the air. Victor narrowed his eyes. Are you accusing me, Hart? I love Isabella. I would never do anything to hurt her. I'm not accusing anyone, just asking questions. I'll need you to be available for further questioning, Roman said, ending the interview. Roman then headed to Evelyn Sinclair's room. She was sitting in a chair near the window, looking out at the storm. There was something fragile yet calculated about the way she carried herself. Mrs. Sinclair, I need to talk to you about Isabella, Roman said, sitting in front of her. Evelyn turned her eyes to him, her face sad. Isabella was always a difficult child, very independent. I tried to be a good stepmother, but she never fully trusted me. She was investigating her father. Did you know that? Roman asked. I knew she was concerned about some of his business decisions, but I didn't know the extent of her investigations, Evelyn replied, her voice low. She was very private. Do you have any reason to believe that someone inside this house was involved in her kidnapping? Roman pressed. Evelyn hesitated, as if pondering what to say. I can't imagine anyone here would do this, but sometimes Thomas seemed to know more than he let on. He was always around, watching. Roman thanked her and went to meet Thomas, who was arranging some things in the kitchen. The butler maintained his upright and calm posture, but there was something in his eyes that suggested an untold story. Thomas, I need to talk to you about what happened last night, Roman said, closely observing the butler's reaction. Of course, Mr. Hart. Ask what you need, Thomas replied, setting aside the cloth he was holding. You mentioned that you heard screams. Can you tell me exactly what you saw and heard? Roman asked. Thomas took a deep breath, as if reliving the scene. I was in my room when I heard a loud noise, like something being knocked over. I ran to Miss Sinclair's room and saw the door ajar. Upon entering, I saw the room in disarray and Miss Sinclair gone. That's when I saw the ransom note. And you didn't see anyone leaving or entering the house? Roman pressed. Unfortunately not. The house is large, and with the rain, anyone could have entered or left without being noticed, Thomas replied, with a genuinely frustrated expression. Roman knew that each of them had reasons to hide the truth, but he also knew that the key to solving the case lay in understanding their stories and motivations. He left the mansion with more questions than answers, but with a renewed determination to uncover the truth. As he walked to his car, the rain fell heavily, washing away doubts and uncertainties, leaving only the firm resolution of a detective in search of justice. He knew the path ahead would be arduous, but each step brought him closer to the truth, and he was willing to follow it to the end, no matter what he found along the way. Chapter 4. The Mystery of the Safe. The clock in Roman's office struck midnight as he finally sat down to examine the pile of documents he had taken from the Sinclair safe. The night was just beginning, and he knew that each page could hide a crucial clue about Isabella's kidnapping. Roman, with his scars and graying hair, had the sharp mind of a veteran detective. He spread the documents across the desk, illuminated only by a desk lamp, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Among the bank transactions and meeting records, a pattern began to emerge. A series of significant financial transfers, all linked to shell companies. Each transaction led to more questions than answers. Let's see what you were trying to uncover, Isabella? Roman murmured, pulling a sheet of paper marked with Victor Hargrove's name. Isabella's fiancé was involved in all the suspicious transactions. Very convenient, Victor. Very convenient. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Thomas, the butler, with more information. Mr. Hart, I remembered something. Isabella mentioned a name. Something about a place called the Trapdoor. Could be important. Thank you, Thomas. I'll look into it, said Roman, noting the name. He knew he needed to visit this place, but first he wanted to delve deeper into the documents. Among the pages, he found Isabella's journal. The latest entries were troubling. March 21st. I discovered something about Victor that scares me. He is connected to dangerous people. I can't trust anyone. March 23rd. I think I'm being followed. I don't know what to do. Should I confront my father? March 25th. I found evidence that Victor is laundering money. I need to tell someone. But who? Roman felt a chill down his spine. Isabella was very close to something big. Big enough for someone to want to silence her. He knew he needed to follow the lead on the trapdoor. The next morning, Roman drove to the address he had found in one of the documents. It was a shady bar, hidden in a forgotten alley of the city. The neon lights flickered, reflecting in the rain puddles, creating a scene worthy of a nightmare. The bar's interior was shrouded in darkness, with shadowy figures hidden in booths. Roman walked up to the counter, where a suspicious-looking bartender was wiping glasses with a dirty cloth. "I'm looking for information about Isabella Sinclair," Roman said, getting straight to the point. The bartender raised an eyebrow but continued wiping the glass. "I don't know anything," he replied curtly. Roman placed a $100 bill on the counter. "Maybe this will refresh your memory." The bartender looked at the bill, then at Roman. "I heard she was asking questions about Victor Hargrove and a certain Mr. K. That's all I know." "Who is Mr. K?" Roman asked, leaning forward. "I don't know. But if you're looking for trouble, you're on the right path," said the bartender, taking the bill. Roman left the bar, his resolve even stronger. He knew that the trapdoor was just the tip of the iceberg, and that Mr. K was the key to unraveling the mystery. The next step was to discover the true identity of this Mr. K. Back in his office, Roman reviewed the documents again, searching for any mention of Mr. K. There was one name that repeatedly appeared in the financial transfers. Carlson. "Carlson, you are my next target," Roman murmured. Roman knew he needed to find Carlson and uncover his connection to Victor Hargrove. Time was running out, and every minute that passed meant more danger for Isabella. He grabbed his coat and headed out into the rainy night, ready to follow any lead he found. The rain continued to fall, but for Roman, each drop was a reminder that the truth was out there, waiting to be discovered. And he wouldn't stop until Isabella was safe and the culprits were brought to justice. Chapter 5: The Blood Trail. The rain intensified as Roman Hart navigated the dark streets of the city, his mind working frantically to piece together the puzzle surrounding Isabella Sinclair's disappearance. The name Carlson was a new and valuable lead, but he needed more information to take the next step. He knew the trail of blood he was following would lead him to dark and dangerous truths. Driving through rundown neighborhoods, Roman arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a location that appeared in one of the financial documents linked to Carlson. The place exuded an air of decay, with graffiti-covered walls and broken windows. It was the kind of place where dark secrets were buried. Roman entered cautiously, his hand always near the holster of his revolver. The interior of the warehouse was dark and silent, except for the sound of rain hammering on the metal roof. He used a flashlight to illuminate his path, revealing scattered debris and broken furniture. On the floor, a trail of blood caught his attention, leading him deeper into the warehouse. He followed the red stains to a small room at the back. The door was ajar, and a metallic smell of fresh blood filled the air. Roman pushed the door open cautiously and found a disturbing scene. There were clear signs of a struggle. Overturned chairs, scattered papers, and, in the center of the room, a piece of Isabella's dress, torn and stained with blood. Roman felt a tightness in his chest. He was on the right track, but the sight of physical evidence of Isabella left him with a mix of urgency and despair. As he inspected the room, he heard a noise behind him. He turned quickly, drawing his revolver. A figure emerged from the shadows, stumbling. It was Frankie, the Nose, a longtime informant of Roman's, known for his network of contacts in the city's underworld. "Frankie, what the hell are you doing here?" Roman asked, keeping the revolver pointed. "Roman, I heard you were looking for Carlson," said Frankie, his voice trembling. "I can help, but we're in danger here." This place is being watched. Roman lowered his gun slightly. Talk fast, Frankie. What do you know about Carlson? He's a middleman, works for Victor Hargrove, but the real boss is a guy known as Mr. K. It's all a power and dirty money game, Roman. Isabella was getting too close, and they grabbed her to shut her up. Where did they take her, Frankie? I need to find her before it's too late, Roman insisted, his voice laden with urgency. Frankie hesitated, glancing nervously around. I heard there's a place, an old country house outside the city. They use it as a hideout. But, Roman, you'll need more than a revolver to take on these guys. Before they could continue the conversation, the loud sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Roman pulled Frankie into a dark corner, both holding their breath. 3 armed men entered the room, their flashlights sweeping the area. What do we do now? Whispered Frankie, fear evident in his voice. Stay quiet and follow my lead, Roman replied, his eyes fixed on the armed men. The men began to search the room, coming dangerously close to Roman and Frankie's hiding spot. Roman knew he didn't have much time. He watched the men's movements, waiting for the right opportunity. When one of the men moved away from the others, Roman acted quickly. He emerged from the shadows, striking with precision and taking the man down before he could react. The noise alerted the other 2, who turned with their guns ready. Roman fired, hitting one man in the shoulder, while Frankie, with newfound courage, attacked the other with a metal bar. The fight was intense and quick. In minutes, the men were on the ground, incapacitated. Roman, panting, checked their pulses. They're alive, but out of commission, he said, turning to Frankie. Now let's get out of here before more of them show up. Roman and Frankie left the warehouse, the rain still pouring outside. Roman felt he was closer to finding Isabella, but he knew time was against him. They needed to reach the old country house before it was too late. The blood trail was becoming clearer, and he wouldn't stop until he brought Isabella back safely and exposed the culprits. As he drove, Roman couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation. Every minute counted, and he was determined to follow every lead, no matter how dangerous. The truth was within reach, and he wouldn't stop until he uncovered all the secrets surrounding Isabella Sinclair's disappearance. Chapter 6. Unexpected Alliance. The rain continued to lash the city, creating an oppressive atmosphere as Roman drove through the dark, winding roads towards the old farmhouse that Frankie had indicated. Urgency burned in his chest, and each beat of the windshield wiper seemed an incessant reminder of the time running out to save Isabella. Frankie, the nose, sat beside Roman, still panting from the fight at the warehouse. Though he was an informant with a shady past, tonight he had become an unexpected and vital ally. Roman knew he couldn't fully trust him, but he needed all the help he could get. This farmhouse, Roman said, his eyes fixed on the road. What else do you know about it? I heard it's used as a hideout by Carlson and his gang. They do everything there, from smuggling deals to holding people hostage. If Isabella is there, we'll need to be very careful, replied Frankie, nervously glancing into the surrounding darkness. Roman nodded, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The farmhouse emerged on the horizon, a dark silhouette against the gray sky. The place had a sinister appearance, with broken windows and overgrown vegetation. It looked like the perfect setting for illicit activities. Parking the car at a safe distance, Roman and Frankie exited silently, advancing stealthily through the forest surrounding the house. The detective moved with the agility and precision of a predator, each step carefully calculated to avoid detection. They approached the house, peering through the dusty windows. Inside, Roman saw figures moving. Armed men stood guard, and in the center of the main room, Isabella was tied to a chair, her face pale and bruised. Roman's heart clenched at the sight of her in that condition. They needed to act quickly. We need to be strategic, Roman whispered to Frankie. I'll create a distraction at the front entrance. While they're busy with me, you enter through the back window and get Isabella out of there. Got it. Frankie nodded, fear still visible in his eyes but determined to help. Got it, Roman. Good luck. Roman moved to the front of the house, positioning himself to be seen by the armed men. He picked up a rock and threw it at a window, breaking the glass and drawing the guards' attention. "Hey, who's there?" shouted one of the men, raising his weapon. Seizing the distraction, Frankie slipped through the back window, entering the house silently. Roman, meanwhile, prepared to confront the approaching guards. When they emerged, Roman attacked with the same precision he had demonstrated at the warehouse, quickly taking them down. Meanwhile, Frankie reached Isabella and began untying her. "We're here to get you out of here, Isabella." "Hold on," he whispered. Isabella, still dazed, nodded, her eyes showing a mix of fear and hope. When the ropes finally fell away, she tried to stand, but her legs were weak. Frankie helped her up, and together they started for the window. Outside, Roman had just neutralized the guards when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned in time to see Carlson, a burly man with a cruel smile, pointing a gun at him. "It's over for you, Hart," said Carlson, his voice dripping with arrogance. Roman slowly raised his hands, feigning submission. "You're Carlson, right? Or should I call you Mr. K?" Carlson laughed. "You don't know when to quit, do you? But your little investigation ends here." Before Carlson could pull the trigger, a shot rang out. Carlson looked in surprise at the hole that appeared in his chest before collapsing to the ground, dead. Frankie emerged behind him, holding a trembling gun. "I think our investigation is just beginning. Isn't it, Roman?" Roman lowered his hands and nodded, a mix of relief and gratitude on his face. "Good job, Frankie." Together, they helped Isabella out of the farmhouse and back to the car. The rain was still falling, but now it seemed a little less oppressive. Roman knew there were still many unanswered questions, but at least Isabella was safe for now. As they drove back to the city, Roman reflected on the complexity of the case and the unexpected alliances he had formed. The truth was slowly revealing itself, and he knew there was still much to uncover. But one thing was certain: he wouldn't rest until all those responsible were brought to justice. Chapter 7. The Clock of Destiny. The morning light began to break over the horizon as Roman Hart parked the car in front of his office. The long, exhausting night had left its mark on everyone. Isabella was worn out, her eyes revealing the depth of the trauma she had faced, but she was safe. Frankie had returned to the city's shadows, his mission completed, at least for now. Roman helped Isabella upstairs to his office, a modest yet comfortable space with walls covered in maps, photos of old cases, and a bookshelf full of files. He settled Isabella into an armchair, offering her a warm drink. "It'll help calm your nerves," he said, trying to comfort her. "Thank you, Roman," murmured Isabella, accepting the tea. Her eyes still reflected fear, but there was a spark of gratitude. Roman sat at his desk, observing Isabella for a moment before speaking. "I need you to tell me everything you know about Carlson and Mr. K. You were investigating something about your father and Victor, weren't you?" Isabella nodded, taking a sip of tea before responding. "Yes, I discovered that Victor was involved in illegal activities, money laundering, and other horrible things. My father wasn't a saint, but I think he was trying to get out of that life. Victor and Carlson, however, wanted to continue, and I was in the way. You mentioned a clock in the ransom note. What does that mean?" Roman asked, his curiosity piqued. "Ah, yes," Isabella replied, staring intently at the floor. "The clock. My father had an old pocket watch. He always said that clock held a secret. When I found it, it was stopped exactly at 11:45. I thought it was just a coincidence. But now, I'm not sure." Roman frowned, thinking, "Where is that clock now?" "It's at the mansion. In the safe in my father's office," said Isabella. Roman knew he needed to return to the Sinclair mansion. The key to unraveling the entire mystery seemed to be in that clock. "We need to go back to the mansion and get that clock. It might be the final piece we need." Before leaving, Roman made a quick call to the police, informing them about Carlson's location and the events that had transpired at the farmhouse. He knew the police presence would ensure no one would return to cover up any evidence. When they arrived at the Sinclair mansion, The sun was already high, dispelling the shadows of the previous night. Thomas, the butler, greeted them with a look of relief and concern. "Miss Sinclair, I'm so happy you're safe," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Thank you, Thomas," replied Isabella with a faint smile. "We need to go to the office. There's something important we need to retrieve." In the office, Roman went straight to the safe, opening it with the combination Isabella provided. Inside, among the documents and personal items, was the pocket watch. It was old, made of polished silver, with intricate details engraved on its surface. Roman carefully picked it up, examining it. "Let's see what secret you hold," murmured Roman, opening the watch. Inside, beyond the usual mechanisms, there was a small hidden compartment. Roman used a needle to open the compartment and found a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it, revealing a series of numbers and letters. "This looks like a code," said Roman, showing it to Isabella. "My father was always a man of codes and secrets," replied Isabella, looking at the paper. "We need to figure out what this means." Back at Roman's office, he began working on the code. Years of experience as a detective helped him recognize patterns quickly. After a few hours of intense concentration, he managed to decipher the code. It was an address. "This address, it's a warehouse on the outskirts of the city," said Roman, showing the paper to Isabella. "I think we've found the next step." As they prepared to leave, Isabella stopped and looked at Roman, her eyes full of determination. "Roman, I want to go with you. I need to see this through to the end." Roman nodded, respecting Isabella's courage. "Let's go together, then. We'll finish this once and for all." They drove to the warehouse mentioned in the code. It appeared to be abandoned, but Roman knew appearances could be deceiving. He and Isabella entered cautiously, ready to face whatever they found inside. In the center of the warehouse, they found a series of files and documents. As Roman examined them, Isabella found something even more disturbing. A series of photos of her, taken over the past few months. Someone had been monitoring all her movements. "This goes beyond Victor and Carlson," said Roman, frowning. "Whoever Mr. K is, he's much more dangerous than we imagined." As they prepared to leave the warehouse, Roman felt they were getting closer to uncovering the mystery. The final piece was almost in their hands, and he knew he needed to be ready for anything. The clock of destiny was ticking, and the truth was about to be revealed. Chapter 8. The Truth Emerges. The warehouse was enveloped in an eerie silence as Roman and Isabella examined the files and photos. Every piece of paper, every image, revealed more about the complex network involving Victor, Carlson, and the mysterious Mr. K. Roman knew they were close to the truth, but he also felt that danger was closer than ever. Isabella held a photo of herself, taken from afar, clearly without her knowledge. "They were watching me this whole time," she murmured, her voice filled with indignation and fear. Roman gently squeezed her shoulder. "We'll find out who's behind this, Isabella, and we'll bring them down." As they left the warehouse, Roman made a call to Detective Daniels, an old friend on the police force. Daniels was a robust man with a thick mustache and an impeccable reputation. "Daniels, we need to meet. I have information that will blow this case wide open. Meet me at my office." Back at the office, Roman and Isabella waited anxiously for Daniels. When he arrived, his presence commanded respect. "Roman, what do you have for me?" he asked, not wasting any time. Roman spread the documents and photos across the desk. "All of this points to a web of corruption and crime involving Victor Hargrove, Carlson, and someone called Mr. K. They kidnapped Isabella to silence her, but we found a code that led us to this warehouse. We need to act fast." Daniels examined the documents, his eyes narrowing. "This is big, Roman. But who is Mr. K? Any ideas?" Roman shook his head. "Not yet, but we're getting close. We need to protect Isabella and follow these leads to the end." As they discussed their next steps, Roman's phone rang. It was an anonymous call. "Detective Hart, if you want to save Isabella, come alone to the address I'll give you. And come quickly." The line went dead before Roman could respond. "Who was it?" asked Isabella, anxiety evident in her voice. I don't know, but it seems Mr. K wants a meeting, Roman replied. Daniels, I need you to stay here and protect Isabella. I'm going to see what this is about. Daniels nodded, his expression serious. Be careful, Roman. This could be a trap. Roman knew that, but he also knew he couldn't ignore the opportunity to confront Mr. K. He drove quickly to the given address. It was an old, abandoned theater, its walls crumbling and windows shattered. A perfect setting for a final showdown. Entering the theater, Roman felt the tension in the air. The place was dark, except for a single beam of light illuminating the center of the stage. There, sitting in a chair, was Victor Hargrove, a cold smile on his lips. Welcome, Roman, said Victor, his voice echoing through the empty theater. I thought it was time we had a chat. Where's Mr. K? Roman asked, his eyes fixed on Victor. Ah, Mr. K. He's closer than you think, replied Victor, standing up slowly. In fact, he's right here. Roman frowned. Are you saying you're Mr. K? Victor laughed, a joyless sound. No, I'm just a pawn. The real Mr. K is someone you know very well. Before Roman could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows. Evelyn Sinclair, Isabella's stepmother, appeared with a triumphant expression. Surprised, Roman? Roman was stunned. Evelyn? You're Mr. K. Yes, it's me, said Evelyn, approaching slowly. Did you really think you could dismantle this operation without facing the true mastermind? Why, Evelyn? Why do this to your own stepdaughter? Roman asked, trying to understand. Isabella was digging where she shouldn't have. She could have destroyed everything I worked for. I couldn't let that happen, replied Evelyn, the coldness in her voice sending shivers down Roman's spine. So you kidnapped Isabella to silence her? Roman asked, his mind racing to process the revelation. Yes, but you've been a persistent nuisance, said Evelyn. Now I'll have to deal with you too. Before Evelyn could make any move, Daniels and a team of police officers stormed into the theater, guns drawn. It's over, Evelyn. You're surrounded, shouted Daniels. Evelyn tried to flee, but was quickly overpowered by the officers. Victor, realizing the situation was out of control, raised his hands in surrender. Roman breathed a sigh of relief as Evelyn and Victor were handcuffed and taken away. He knew the battle wasn't entirely over, but the immediate threat was neutralized. He walked out of the theater, feeling the weight of responsibility lift slightly. Back at the office, Isabella waited anxiously. When Roman entered, she rushed to him, her eyes full of questions. What happened? It's over, Isabella. Evelyn was Mr. K. You're safe now, said Roman, enveloping her in a protective embrace. Isabella sighed in relief, holding Roman tightly. Thank you, Roman. I don't know what I would have done without you. Roman looked at her, determined. We'll make sure justice is served, Isabella. This story isn't over yet, but we'll see it through to the end. As the sun began to set, Roman knew that while they had won an important battle, the war for justice and truth continued, and he was prepared to face any challenge that came their way, knowing that with Isabella by his side, they could overcome any obstacle. Chapter 9. The Risky Rescue. The sky was tinged with a deep red as the sun set, casting a sinister light over the city. Roman Hart knew there was still work to be done. Although Evelyn and Victor were in custody, there were loose ends that needed tying up. Isabella was still in danger until the entire network was dismantled. Back in his office, Roman prepared for the next step. Isabella was safe, but the weight of the recent revelations still hung over them. We need to ensure all of Evelyn's operations are dismantled. More importantly, we need to find out who else is involved, said Roman, his voice firm and determined. Isabella, seated beside him, looked at the documents spread across the table. But how are we going to do that, Roman? Evelyn had many contacts and resources. We'll use the information we have, replied Roman, picking up a folder full of documents. We have addresses, names, and transactions. We'll turn all this over to the police, but first, we need to ensure that all the involved parties are captured. Roman and Isabella spent the night reviewing the documents, mapping out the details of Evelyn's criminal operations. The list of names was extensive, and the web of corruption spread throughout the city. There were politicians, businessmen, and even members of the security forces involved. Early in the morning, Roman made another call to Detective Daniels. "Daniels, we have crucial information. I need you to gather a trusted team. We're going to end this once and for all." Daniels, as determined as Roman to clean the city of corruption, didn't hesitate. "I'll gather the team. Meet us at the abandoned warehouse on 5th Avenue in an hour." Roman and Isabella arrived at the warehouse with a briefcase full of evidence. Daniels was there, accompanied by a team of officers prepared for a large-scale operation. "We're ready, Roman. What do we have?" Roman opened the briefcase and spread the documents on an improvised table. "We have addresses of safe houses, meeting locations, and the names of all those involved. We're going to hit them simultaneously to ensure no one escapes." Daniels nodded, passing the instructions to his team. "Roman, you and Isabella will come with me. We're heading to Evelyn's main hideout. That's where we'll find the final evidence." They headed to a decaying mansion on the outskirts of the city, Evelyn's last stronghold. The mansion was surrounded by high walls and security cameras. Roman knew it would be a risky mission, but there was no other choice. Upon arrival, Daniels' team strategically spread out. Roman, Isabella, and Daniels advanced through the main gate, moving with military precision. The entrance was guarded by armed men, but the element of surprise was in their favor. Roman took down the first guard with a quick blow, while Daniels subdued the second. Inside the mansion, the tension was palpable. They moved silently through the corridors, checking each room. Finally, they reached a locked office. Roman broke the door open, revealing a room filled with documents, money, and weapons. "Evelyn was really prepared for war," said Daniels, picking up a stack of documents. "These are the final pieces of evidence we need." As they searched the office, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. Roman turned in time to see one of Evelyn's henchmen trying to escape. He chased after him, catching up before he could get out. "Where do you think you're going?" Roman asked, pinning the man against the wall. "I don't know anything, I swear," the henchman pleaded, but Roman knew he was lying. "Talk, or things will get much worse for you," Roman threatened, tightening his grip on the man's arm. Okay, I'll tell you everything." Evelyn had a contingency plan. She wanted to flee to a safe house outside the city. "It's all on a flash drive hidden in the office," the henchman confessed. Roman returned to the office and found the flash drive in the bottom of a secret drawer. He connected it to a laptop and opened the files. There were detailed escape plans, secret bank accounts, and, most importantly, a list of accomplices still at large. "This is everything we need," said Roman, looking at Daniels. "Let's make sure they're all captured." With the information in hand, Daniels' team coordinated a series of simultaneous operations across the city. Evelyn's accomplices were arrested one by one, and the network of corruption began to collapse. As the sun rose again, Roman and Isabella stood atop a building, looking over the city they had helped save. "It's over, Isabella. It's finally over," said Roman, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. Isabella looked at him, a sincere smile on her face. "Thank you, Roman, for everything." Roman smiled back. "We still have a long road ahead, but at least now, we know we can face anything together." They stood there, side by side, ready for whatever came next, knowing that regardless of the challenges, truth and justice would always prevail. Chapter 10: Redemption and Recognition. The sun shone over the city, illuminating a new day and new hope. For Roman Hart, this day meant much more than the end of a complicated case. It symbolized redemption, justice, and a battle won against the shadows that had tried to dominate his life and Isabella Sinclair's. News of Evelyn Sinclair's arrest and the dismantling of her criminal network spread quickly. Roman was hailed as a hero, but he knew that the true victory lay in Isabella's safety and the destruction of the corruption that had threatened the city. A week later, the City Hall organized a recognition ceremony for Roman, Isabella, and all the police officers involved in the operation. The central square was filled with people, journalists, and important figures of the city. The mayor, an imposing man with a strong and clear voice, stepped onto the stage to begin the ceremony. Today, we are here to honor those who fought bravely against corruption and crime in our city, said the mayor. Thanks to the tireless work and courage of Roman Hart, Isabella Sinclair, and the police force, we have dismantled a criminal network that threatened our safety and future. Roman, dressed in his most formal suit, stepped onto the stage alongside Isabella. The applause was deafening, and he felt a wave of gratitude and pride. When the mayor handed him a Medal of Honor, Roman made a brief speech. "This is a moment of great importance for all of us," Roman began, his voice echoing through the square. "But the true victory belongs to every citizen of this city who believes in justice and truth. We work together to ensure that corruption does not prevail, and we will continue to do so." Isabella, standing beside him, smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. When it was her turn to speak, her voice trembled slightly, but it was full of determination. "I want to thank Roman and everyone who helped us. This is a new beginning for our city, and I promise to continue fighting for justice and truth." After the ceremony, Roman and Isabella were surrounded by journalists and citizens expressing their gratitude. Roman patiently answered all the questions, but his mind was focused on the future. He knew that despite the victory, there was still much to be done to keep the city safe and just. Later, back in his office, Roman reflected on everything that had happened. The place felt different now, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Isabella entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "For the bravest and most stubborn detective I know," she said, handing him a cup. Roman laughed, accepting the coffee. "And for the most determined and courageous heiress I've ever known." They toasted, a simple gesture but full of meaning. "What's next, Roman?" Isabella asked, curious. "Well, I think we can give ourselves a little break," Roman replied, looking out the window at the city he loved so much. "But soon we'll be back in action. Crime never takes a vacation, and neither do we." Isabella nodded, knowing Roman was right. "We'll face anything together, won't we?" "Yes, Isabella. Together," Roman said, feeling a deep connection and partnership that he knew would last forever. As the sun set, casting a golden light over the city, Roman and Isabella stood there, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew the fight for justice was constant, but with courage, determination, and each other's support, they could overcome any obstacle. And so, with the city breathing easier and justice prevailing, Roman Hart prepared for the next chapter of his life, knowing that, in the end, truth and courage would always triumph.